Donald Trump and Mark Carney speak on the phone for the first time amid an intense trade war. How the two leaders are describing their conversation, that's coming up tonight.
Another home invasion caught on camera. Investigators in Vaughan are looking for a number of suspects who broke into a home with a hammer.
And a big win for proponents of supervised drug consumption sites tonight. A judge has granted an injunction that would keep 10 controversial locations open for now. We're tracking reaction.
An ice storm could be heading to the GTA this weekend. We'll break it down. We've got the timeline.
You're watching Live at 5.
Hello, I'm Melissa Duggan.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Live at 5. A glimmer of hope in the never-ending saga of Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs today. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump, they're both making positive comments following their first phone call today.
CP24's Cija Liu is outside the U.S. consulate on University Avenue with the details. A lot happening today, Cija.
Yeah, and definitely a glimmer of hope and a big tone change coming from the U.S. president after this call. Productive and constructive. That's how both U.S. President Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney are describing their phone call today. This morning call today was requested by the White House, and it was the first time these two have spoken since Mark Carney became Prime Minister 2 weeks ago. As for what came out of this call, Carney says that they have agreed to begin negotiations, comprehensive negotiations on new economic and security relationships. He also said that their call was cordial and both countries make progress. He also added that the president respects Canada's sovereignty today, both in his private and public comments. And we're also hearing a huge tone change from Donald Trump as well. He said that things will work out between Canada and the U.S., also calling this call extremely productive. However, what didn't change today are the tariffs that are still in place. Those tariffs he imposed on steel and aluminum still have not gone away, and he is also set to announce new tariffs on April 2nd, as well as those auto tariffs. So no tangible changes in terms of those taxes directly following that call. Here's more reaction from Carney and Trump following their call today.
Today, President Trump and I spoke on the phone. We had a very constructive discussion, and we agreed to begin comprehensive negotiations about a new economic and security relationship between our two sovereign countries immediately following the federal election. I made it clear that I will be working very hard with my colleagues behind me. I will be working very hard over the next month to earn the right to represent Canada in those discussions.
We had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, because, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, And, you know, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant.
And we're also seeing Trump change his tone on social media. On Truth Social, he called Prime Minister Mark Carney Prime Minister. If you recall, he used to call Justin Trudeau the governor of Canada. So it seems like that was a great phone call, a huge tone change from Donald Trump. But Lena, Melissa, if we know anything, things can change very fast in this trade war.
That is for sure. Thanks so much for this, Cija. And staying with this trade war, Mayor Olivia Chow, she spent the day in Washington attending meetings on tariffs with other mayors from Canada, the U.S., and Mexico.
Let's bring in CP24's Arda Zakarian for a closer look at this D.C. trip. What is Chow's message today, Arda?
Well, it's really on relying on our own selves. She did say, though, that the mayors had a very productive meeting. They met for around 3 hours to discuss the tariffs, including the 25% tariff on automobiles that's looming. It's going to be collected starting April the 3rd. And we know Ontario and Michigan share a very close, intertwined relationship when it comes to automobiles and trade. Car parts go back and forth many times before the actual vehicle is assembled. But she did say that all of the mayors came to agreement that they are going to fight these tariffs that threaten jobs, make life more expensive for families and for communities.
Mayor from United States, Canada, and Mexico are speaking with one voice. During the summit, we express our fear, the fear of price of everything going up, cost of living making us life unaffordable, jobs lost. But despite that fear, there's a real sense of unity and hope to say that if we are together, and we know we are strong.
Before this meeting, Mayor Chow had the chance to go on American news channels like CNN, CBS, MSNBC, and she did say there that she doesn't know if that trust and that relationship can be repaired after what has happened. She says the price of cars are going to go up. So if you need a car, to buy it now, because cars, gasoline, food, groceries, all of that stuff is going to increase. It's going to impact really everyone. And Chow says she's going to fight back because we're going to rely more on ourselves, as I said earlier, make our own goods, buy our own goods. Even at the city level, Chow says that herself and also City Council have agreed on a new procurement policy, basically relying on Canadian suppliers more and awarding Canadian construction companies more contracts. Back to you.
So yet another Canadian politician making their voice heard in Washington. Thanks so much for that, Arda. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre continuing his campaign in Nanaimo, BC today, promising to crack down on drug kingpins if elected.
Yeah, Poilievre is promising to impose life sentences for anybody involved in the trafficking, production, and distribution of over 40 milligrams of fentanyl. During today's campaign stop, Poilievre pointed out opioids killed 50,000 Canadians over the past decade. And Poilievre also spoke about the conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Carney. Take a listen to that.
I was glad to learn that the President and Prime Minister spoke today, and like all Canadians, I hope they had a successful talk, and I look forward to hearing about the results that they achieved in that conversation for Canadians. But regardless of what was said, what is now clear is that it was a mistake over the last lost Liberal decade to weaken our economy and become more dependent on the Americans. Liberals blocked pipelines, LNG plants, port expansions, and other major projects because of a radical net zero ideology that has now made us more reliant on the Americans than ever before. We need to break that reliance. We need to put Canada first for a change.
Poilievre blamed America for the rise of gun violence across Canada, saying 85% of guns in Toronto have been traced back to the U.S.
Let's talk about the NDP now. Leader Jagmeet Singh was in Riverdale in Toronto today to make several housing-related announcements.
The NDP promising new rules for corporate landlords and more help for nonprofit groups in an effort to tackle rising housing costs. While campaigning, Singh pledged a ban on large corporate landlords from buying existing affordable renting properties to prevent so-called rent evictions.
And I had the chance to sit down with Mr. Singh today. He stopped by our studio for a one-on-one interview this afternoon. We talked about these tariff threats, and he says combating them, that is his biggest concern.
When it comes to the way Mark Carney is responding to Donald Trump, I'm on Team Canada. I want to see us win. I want to support any effort we can to fight back for Canadians. Domestically, though, my concerns are, I've said from the beginning, we need an EI that covers workers and covers enough of their salary to pay the bills. Right now, EI covers about 55% of your salary, so half your salary. 20 years ago, maybe that would have covered your groceries and maybe your mortgage or your rent. But today, most workers are spending all of their salary on their bills, on their mortgage, on their rent. And so there's not much left over. The budgets are really tight. We need more of the salary covered in EI so that workers know that if they are impacted by these tariffs, they're actually going to be able to keep their homes, they're going to be able to keep paying their bills and keep food on the table.
It was an extensive conversation you had with Singh today. Yeah. The NDP also promising more money for the Rental Protection Fund to help support community housing projects.
And we're going to have more of that conversation coming up in the next half hour. Let's stay on the campaign trail. Nick Nanos with Nanos Research talked to us about what he's seeing so far when it comes to voter support.
The older you are, the more likely you are probably to vote Liberal. If you're under 50 years of age, you're probably more likely to vote Conservative. What's interesting, maybe one way to think of this, at least now in the polling, is that if you are working, you're probably looking at the Conservatives because you're worried about paying for your bills, you're worried about your job, you're worried about all that other kind of stuff. If you are not necessarily working and you're retired, you're probably feeling a little more comfortable. Your mortgage might be paid or might be low. Housing's not as much of an issue. So think of that as a potential dividing line. The big question is how will Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats tap into this?
Conservative strategist Jamie Ellerton joined me live this afternoon to talk about how the Canada-U.S. trade dispute is impacting the campaign trail.
We know the executive order was assigned that is going to impact Canada's auto industry. Of course, the Trump tariffs were coming at the end of January, and then the big three auto CEOs got into the White House and the president's ear and says, this is going to upend the entire industry across North America, including American jobs. Don't do this. And you got this reprieve that's now into April. So there is so much guessing as to what is going on here. I think it speaks to the need, quite frankly, for leaders to not play by Trump's game. What is Canada going to do? We've heard about internal trade barriers. We know we need to do a better job of getting resources to market, whether that's mining or energy. And so much of that needs to be the focus that Canadians debate of in this federal election, rather than living or dying by what a tweet coming out of the White House is.
Now, a familiar name is topping the list of public provincial employees who earn more than $100,000 a year.
Former Ontario Power Generation Chief Executive Ken Hardwick took top spot on the so-called Sunshine List for 2024 with a salary of more than $2 million. It is the fifth consecutive year he was at the top of the list. Hardwick ended his tenure at OPG CEO at the end of the year. The second highest paid employee was also an OPG executive.
Time now is 5:11, 3 degrees in the city, and you're watching Live at 5.
Still ahead, a Toronto Hydro worker has been killed in an incident near the harbourfront. It happened while crews were doing maintenance inside a vault. We have the latest on the investigation into this death.
Welcome back. A Toronto Hydro worker is dead after an industrial accident near the harbourfront.
Toronto Hydro says it happened as crews were doing maintenance work at a hydro vault near Queens Quay and Reese Street at around 2 a.m. The Ministry of Labour says the victim, a man in his 30s, came in contact with live wires and was fatally injured. A second person who witnessed the incident was also taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Power was shut off to the vault, and some outages are being reported in the area.
Well, police have released footage showing the moment 4 suspects broke into a home in Vaughan yesterday, and they were armed with hammers.
We go live to CP24 crime analyst Steve Ryan for the latest on this investigation. The video of this, Steve, stunning.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it was a video that was released today by York Regional Police. And what it shows is 4 suspects attempting to break into a home in this Vaughan neighborhood at Athabasca Drive and Hunterwood Chase. Have a look at the video here. 4 suspects approach the home. You can hear the audio where the surveillance video lets the people know that the suspects know that they are under surveillance. The suspects then try to break into the home using their feet, and then one of the suspects brandishes a hammer. They smash the window, and police tell us that another one of the 4 suspects had a firearm. So this is very concerning because it appears to be a random targeted event whereby this house was targeted as a result of vehicles that weren't in the driveway at the time. They were in the garage. And this poses an even greater concern for police because, as you'll hear from the officer, it could suggest that this house was, in fact, scoped out or staked out by the suspects before they attempted to do this at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because, again, there was no evidence of any vehicle in the driveway. The vehicles must have been in the garage, but it appears as though these suspects knew all about that. Here's more from York Regional Police. Let's listen.
for this was trying to get car keys. After the suspects entered the home, they did confront the homeowners and they did make demands for car keys. Now, we're very concerned about this, obviously, because you can see in the video there are no cars that are parked in the driveway, which suggests that there's some level of forethought that they knew there were high-end vehicles that would be parked in the garage. Fortunately, they did not make off with any vehicles as they were unable to locate any of these car keys, and they did flee shortly thereafter in a sedan. There were no injuries, but we do want to make sure that anybody that has any information, anyone that may have heard anything or was in the area, contacts the police as soon as possible.
As a law enforcement manager managing law and disorder, crime and disorder, this is very concerning because anybody could be a victim of this type of violent act. So police are certainly looking into this investigation. We're showing you the still photos of the suspects that were captured on the video surveillance. And sadly, it's at a time when in your neighborhood, be vigilant. And if you see somebody hanging around a house that looks suspicious at all, do give the police a call. You certainly won't be wasting their time. Send it back to the desk.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for this. Steve Ryan live in Vaughan for us tonight. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's Breaking News, CP24.
Still ahead, a judge has granted an injunction to keep supervised drug consumption sites open for now. We'll have reaction and details. What does this mean? Coming up.
Welcome back. A judge has granted an injunction to keep 10 supervised drug consumption sites in the province open for now.
The injunction just coming down blocks the sites from being closed while the judge considers a charter challenge of a provincial law that bans them from operating near schools and daycares. The province has argued that drug dealing, violence and disorder are problems near the sites. It wants to convert 9 of the facilities into what it has dubbed homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs, or HEART hubs. The judge says the sites that were slated to close can remain open until 30 days after he decides the case.
And we are hearing from the Ontario Ministry of Health. This is the Office of Health Minister Sylvia Jones responding to this development in the form of a statement that says our priority is to protect children and families from violent crime and dangerous public drug use occurring at drug injection sites located near schools and daycares. That statement goes on to say the transition of the 9 drug injection sites to homelessness, addiction, and recovery treatment hubs will proceed as planned on April 1st. Provincial funding for HEART hubs cannot be used for drug injection services and will be contingent on the organization not seeking to continue those services. So for reaction to this ruling, we're joined live by Bill Sinclair tonight. He's the president and chief executive officer of the neighborhood group Community Services. Bill, good to have you on, and thank you for joining us. Let me begin with your reaction to this development and this injunction.
So we're very happy. We're thrilled about the injunction. We and our sister organizations have been saving people's lives for 8 years. 21,000 overdoses have been reversed in the last 5 years at these sites. So thousands of people are walking around today, are healthier today because this service has been available for people. And we're glad that we won't have to close on April 1st. We will continue to provide life-saving services. And we're very grateful to the court for giving us this breathing room while the court makes the final decision. So we're grateful to the community as well for their support the last 8 years to stay open, and we plan to. We also run childcare centers, for our organization. The childcare center that's closest to us is the childcare center that we run, and we care about children deeply. And we are also very concerned that good healthcare services and good, safe childcare services coexist in our neighborhoods.
There's a lot happening here, Bill, so quickly. We were looking at that March 31st deadline for those 10 centers in Ontario that were set to close, 5 of them in the Toronto area. So with just a few days before that deadline, I'm wondering if these sites have what they need to operate for at least these next 30 days.
So some sites are transitioning to HEART hubs, which is great. HEART hubs are going to be more healthcare, more treatment, and more housing in our community. So we are challenging this law because it's closing sites that that may not want to close, but sites also have the choice to become heart hubs as well. And so that is happening at the same time. So it is a complicated story, and each site is going to decide what their future is going to be. In our case, we are fighting to stay open as a supervised consumption site to support people, just like we're also fighting to keep our childcare center open too.
Okay, I want to get your understanding of the situation here. When the health ministry says in a statement that the transition of the 9 drug injection sites to these heart hubs will proceed as planned on April 1st, how does that sit with you? What does that mean for the future of these locations?
So as I say, they have applied to become heart hubs. They have chosen to be heart hubs, and they are going to be providing great services to the community, and I'm happy about that. They'll each have to decide whether they want to do both, not at the same location, and of course, as the minister says, not using the same money. But this injunction just allows us to have a choice about what services we want to offer, what healthcare services that save lives we want to offer in our communities, and how we can do that. Ultimately, this case is before the courts, and we're waiting to see what the long-term future is going to be for services that save lives.
And Bill, just really quickly, we're running out of time, but I just feel like there's not a lot of clarity exactly what's going to be happening over this next little stretch. The sites that are staying open, will safe injections still be allowed at those centers like yours?
So far, I'm the only site that I'm aware of that's staying open, but that's each, as I say, each site is going to have to decide for themselves, but the injunction gives people the right to make those decisions and have those choices. So there are other sites that weren't within 200 meters of schools or childcares, and they are staying open as well. The other 5 in Toronto are also staying open with us. And so the injunction just allows those who want to stay open, and those who are transitioning to heart hubs will also transition to heart hubs.
And as you noted, the big question here now is what happens once a ruling does come down. Bill Sinclair, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Neighborhood Group Community Services. Good to be with you, and I'm sure we'll chat with you again. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
It is 5:24 and 3 degrees. This is Live at 5.
It's the last weekend of March, and it's going to feel a lot like winter this weekend. We're going to have more on a potential ice storm heading our way.
A special weather statement is in effect for much of Ontario as freezing rain is on the way. For more on what kind of weekend weather we could expect, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Vizcaya. Lindsay, what is coming our way?
I know, and it feels like we just kind of escaped winter, Melissa and Lena, and we're heading towards spring. Not yet. There was always that kind of false start to spring sometime around March, and we definitely got that. But yeah, I mean, this is a spring storm coming in, so there's a lot of precipitation on the way, but it really depends on where you are. That's where you'll know which type of precipitation you're going to get. For example, in Toronto, we're expecting more rain, possibly some ice. If you're in areas outside of the GTA, north and east of the GTA, you can expect quite a bit of snow. So that special weather statement starting tonight, we're expecting quite a bit of rain or ice or snow, again, depending on where you are, starting tonight. There's actually 2 different systems moving in throughout the course of the weekend. So the first one tonight, the heavier amount of precipitation is coming for Saturday night into Sunday. In the Toronto area, we could see about 3 to 5 millimeters of rain or ice, possibly some ice if we go below freezing, but honestly, it's pretty warm in the Toronto area right now. So a lot of people, a lot of experts saying that we could avoid the worst of it in the city. We heard from Environment Canada's Dave Phillips earlier today, who also said that Toronto probably isn't going to get that much really terrible weather. Take a listen.
Toronto is actually maybe fortunate compared to some other areas of Ontario. You have a special weather statement, but not too far away in some of your viewing area, up certainly in the Barrie, Orillia, the Muskoka area, and north of Toronto in the Newmarket and Uxbridge, Cobourg, up to Peterborough, Kingston. We're going to see that clearly they're into a weather warning with freezing rain. It's certainly, as you're right, it's going to start around late afternoon, and then there is that going to be added risk around 8 o'clock of freezing rain in the Toronto area.
So what we can expect for sure in Southern Ontario is widespread power outages. That's definitely an alert that the Weather Network is putting out, saying you can expect power to be down in certain areas. We're going to be watching for that throughout the weekend to see what exactly happens. If you're on the roads, and especially if you already decided to take your snow tires off because you felt as though that the temperature wasn't going to dip too far, definitely OPP urging people to be careful as well, to take your time driving this weekend, especially there could be some low visibility as well when we see that snow, ice or rain moving into the region. Back to you.
My snow tires came off last weekend, so I guess that means I'm staying home this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, Lindsay, thanks so much for this. It's now 5:32 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Donald Trump and Mark Carney speaking on the phone for the very first time amid an intense trade war. How the two leaders are describing their conversation, that is coming up. Stay with us. We are live outside the U.S. consulate on University Avenue tonight. Donald Trump, Mark Carney speaking on the phone for the first time today amid an intense trade war. How the two leaders are describing that conversation, that's coming up.
And another home invasion caught on camera. Investigators in Vaughan, they're looking for a number of suspects who broke into a home with a hammer.
And a big win for proponents of supervised drug consumption sites today. A judge has granted an injunction that would keep 10 controversial locations open for now. We're tracking reaction.
Plus, an ice storm could be heading to the GTA this weekend. We'll have the latest on 2 different systems moving into our region, and we'll break down the timing of it all.
This is Live at 5.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lena Latifat.
And I'm Melissa Duggan. Welcome to Live at 5. A glimmer of hope in the never-ending saga of Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs today.
Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump are both making positive comments following their very first conversation today. CP24's Sija Liu is outside the U.S. consulate on University Avenue with those details. Sija.
Lena, Melissa, it seems like the first time in months Canada and the U.S. are friendly again. This is after the phone call between Prime Minister Mark Carney and U.S. President Donald Trump. They both had good things to say about the call, separately describing it as productive and constructive, and say that both countries made good progress. Now, this long-awaited phone call took place this morning. It was requested by the White House, and it marks the first time both leaders are speaking since Mark Carney became Prime Minister about 2 weeks ago. Now, Carney said the leaders agreed to a comprehensive negotiations about security and economy relationship. He said the call was cordial and that progress was made for both sides. He also said President Trump respected Canada's sovereignty. Now, we're also seeing a huge tone change from Donald Trump after this call. He spoke at the White House earlier saying things will work out very well between Canada and the U.S. Another notable thing is how he's speaking on social media. He had previously called Justin Trudeau the governor of Canada, but now he's posting on Truth Social saying he had a great call with Prime Minister Mark Carney, addressing him by the proper title. He also said they agreed on many things, and he looks forward to immediately meeting after Canada's upcoming election. Here's more from Carney and Trump himself on how they felt that talk went.
This was a call between two leaders of their respective governments, between two sovereign nations. It was a call focused on the spirit of the call was both cordial and focused on making progress. And that's why you had several things. One is an agreement, which is what I wanted, what I think he wanted as well. And I've been clear about this for a number of weeks, to have a comprehensive discussion on our broader economic and security partnership.
We had a very good conversation. Mark called me today at 10 o'clock. We put out a statement. We had a very, very good talk. He's going through an election now, and we'll see what happens. But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd, because, and I'm not referring to Canada, but many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible for many, many decades, for decades. And, you know, that has to stop. We're going to end up with a very good relationship with Canada and a lot of the other countries. Some we probably won't. It won't be so pleasant.
Despite the call going very well, it is seemingly just words right now. There are no changes in terms of the tariffs right now. Trump has not pulled back the tariffs on steel and aluminum. He has not indicated if he would change his mind on the April 2nd reciprocal tariffs that he's planning on announcing as well. Now, we did hear from Ottawa that Carney told Trump in the call that Canada will be imposing reciprocal tariffs if Donald Trump goes ahead with his plan on April 2nd. So, Lena, Melissa, a glimmer of hope today, but no changes on those tariffs just yet.
Yeah, a lot of talk, not a lot of action. Thanks so much for that, Zija. Mayor Olivia Chow has spent the day in Washington, D.C., attending meetings on tariffs with other mayors from Canada, the U.S., and Mexico.
Let's bring in CP24's Arda Zakarian for a closer look at that trip in D.C. Arda.
And of course, they talked about tariffs. We know there's that 25% tariff on automobiles that's going to really affect both the United States and Canada, in particular Ontario and Michigan. We know car parts go back and forth so many times before an actual vehicle is assembled. And Mayor Chow says that today's meeting with the mayors of the United States, of Mexico, of Canada was very productive, and they were really united. They had a 3-hour meeting to discuss how these tariffs are threatening jobs and making life more expensive for families and communities.
That spirit of unity give us that hope as we share our stories of resilience, as we share our best practices on how we could get through this trade war by continually connecting with each other. The word that came out that I heard was solidarity, of being together. And we remain hopeful that our voices will be heard because we are a level of government closest to the people. And when people speaks out, no one can ignore them.
Mayor Chow also appeared on American news channels like CNN, CBS, MSNBC, and she did express that she knows that relationship between the United States and Canada might not recover. That trust there is broken. And she said that the price of cars is definitely going to go up. So if you need a car, to buy it now because the price is going to be increased, not just on that, but on gasoline, on groceries, on food. And Chow says that the way that we're going to fight back is that we're going to rely on ourselves, make our own goods, buy our own goods, and that's starting with the city's procurement policy. The city here at home, along with Mayor Chow, City Council, have agreed to change that procurement policy to rely more on Canadian suppliers and award Canadian construction companies more contracts. Back to you.
Every single government in this country is responding to these tariffs. Arda Zakarian, live in our newsroom tonight with more on Olivia Chow's message. Thank you, Arda. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, a woman accused of killing 3 people in 3 different cities, including Toronto, has been deemed unfit for trial. We're going to bring you the latest. A woman accused of killing 3 people in 3 different cities in the province will have to undergo psychiatric treatment after being deemed unfit to stand trial.
Sabrina Kaldar is facing 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. The charges stem from deaths in Toronto, Niagara Falls, and Hamilton that police say took place over 3 consecutive days in October. A Toronto judge has ruled Kaldar is unfit for trial at this time and has ordered her to receive 60 days of psychiatric treatment before she'll be reassessed.
Police have released footage showing the moment 4 suspects broke into a home in Vaughan yesterday.
We go live now to CP24's crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's standing by with the very latest on this investigation. This is part of a really troubling trend, Steve.
Yeah, Lena, it certainly is. The house that appears to be targeted was on Athabasca Drive in Vaughan. We're going to show you the surveillance video that the police released today. The police say, York Regional Police say that Thursday morning at 2 a.m., 4 suspects attempted to break into this home. They were brandishing hammers. One of the suspects apparently had a gun as well. And when they gained access to the home, they were demanding keys to the cars. Now, what I noticed right away when I saw the surveillance video was that there were no vehicles in the driveways. The vehicles were in the garage, which certainly does suggest, and it's very troubling if in fact proven to be true, that this house may have been scoped out by these suspects before they took this brazen approach trying to break into the house and forcibly take the keys from the owners. Now, they did not get any keys to the cars, and they wound up leaving empty-handed, and a fifth suspect waiting in a getaway vehicle drove the suspects away. So it is very concerning to York Regional Police. And as you said, this is something that's trending right now, and that is suspects going into people's homes to get their car keys, to steal their cars. Oftentimes, home invasions, there's a connection between the home and the suspects. But now we're seeing home invasions occur where the only connection is the high-end vehicles that these thieves want to take. Here's more from York Regional Police, who we heard from earlier today. Let's listen.
Home invasions for cars are nothing new. Our hold-up unit is very well aware of it. This does seem to be a more common occurrence now that traditional car thefts are down. We're seeing these very high-end vehicles that are being targeted, particularly the ones that can't be stolen without the car keys. We do want to make sure that everybody is very diligent. In this case, we do have very good video surveillance that was there. There were alarms on the house, and we do want to make sure that everyone remembers that the biggest thing they can do for us is make sure that these are updated, that these are installed. Our investigators are on the case, and they want to make sure that they're getting as much information as quickly as possible.
We're going to show the pictures of the suspects again, and surveillance video certainly does help the police in their investigation, but it really doesn't deter a lot of these suspects who take the brazen approach of trying to break into a home to get the car keys. And sadly, if in fact this house was scoped out for the vehicles that weren't in plain view, sadly, people in their homes need to pay attention to who's on their streets. And if they think their house or their neighbor's house is being scoped out by suspects, they certainly aren't wasting the time of the police by giving them a call, and the police will certainly follow up. Seems to be what's occurring here lately, and it's a concerning trend, that's for sure. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thanks so much for this, Steve. Steve Ryan in Vaughan tonight. Well, a judge has granted an injunction to keep 10 supervised drug consumption sites in the province open for now.
The injunction blocks the sites from being closed while the judge considers a charter challenge of a provincial law that bans them from operating near schools and daycares. The province has argued that drug dealing, violence, and disorder are problems near the sites. It wants to convert 9 of the facilities into what it has dubbed homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs, or HEART hubs. The judge says the sites that were slated to close can remain open until 30 days after he decides the case.
The Ontario Ministry of Health has released a statement, and that says, our priority is to protect children and families from violent crime and dangerous public drug use occurring at drug injection sites located near schools and daycares. The transition of the 9 drug injection sites to homelessness, addiction, and recovery treatment hubs will proceed as planned on April 1st. Provincial funding for HEART hubs cannot be used for drug injection services and will be contingent on the organization not seeking to continue those services. For reaction to this development, we're joined live tonight by Diana Chan McNally, community and crisis worker. Diana, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this ruling? Are you cautiously optimistic about where this is going?
I would say I'm definitely cautiously optimistic about this. I think what we've seen is that the judge is understanding that if we close these sites now, we will actually cause irreparable harm to people who actually use drugs. So for the meantime, I'm feeling good about the decision that's been made. But at the same time, and we've just seen it on the screen, is that one way or another, most of these sites have been defunded. So even if they're granted the injunction to remain operational, the truth is that they are no longer in receipt of provincial funding to operate their services. The only 2 sites that may not be impacted would be Street Health, which would remain open anyway, and also one of the applicants in terms of this litigation, which would be the neighborhood group. So they will continue to operate their site. But for the rest of them, it simply doesn't seem to be feasible because they just won't have the money.
And it's, been quite a journey since we learned about the province's decision to close so many sites over the summer. There has been vocal outpouring from harm reduction workers who say that closing these sites, not allowing this supervised injection sites, that's going to cost lives, that lives will be lost during all of this. I wonder if you could just kind of break down for us what this change in service might look like without having this option to have the supervised injection at the sites, also the collection of needles as well.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding by the government here about what's really going on and what the real threat is. I think they're assuming that we have an addiction crisis, and the reality is that we have a toxic drug crisis. What's actually killing people is the toxicity of the drugs on the street. And this isn't just people who use drugs on a frequent basis who might be termed addicts, but we're also talking about kids who are using drugs for the first time. We're also talking about people who use casually. And that is the real threat to their lives. And this is what supervised consumption sites help to mitigate. When we talk about these heart hubs, they don't replicate any of the services that address toxic drugs. They're instead doubling down on this narrative that it's addiction that is killing people when that is not the case.
I heard you say that the province is essentially defunding the supervised consumption portion of these sites. I want to bring up part of what the Ministry of Health said today about that. Provincial funding for heart hubs cannot be used for drug injection services and will be contingent on the organization not seeking to continue those services. So how are locations going to be able to offer that to people if they are essentially defunded, Diana?
Well, this is the problem. If they are not in receipt of provincial funding to actually operate these programs, even if they're allowed lawfully to continue, where's the money going to come from? Again, we have the neighborhood group who operate KMOPS, which is located in Kensington Market. They'll continue to operate because they have not been in receipt of provincial funding for quite a long time. But for other organizations that are operating these supervised consumption sites, unless they have some ability to pivot quickly and gain the funding necessary to continue to operate, they simply won't be able to continue to operate. So regardless, you're going to see the service disappear largely from our communities, which is to say that we won't have anything in place officially that will help to mitigate the harm of toxic drugs.
Okay, a big update on this week. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana Chan McNally, community and crisis worker. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
It is 5:49 and 2 degrees. This is Live at 5.
Coming up, at least 150 people are dead after a 7.7 magnitude earthquake hits Thailand and Myanmar.
The death toll from a massive earthquake in Southeast Asia has risen to at least 150.
The vast majority of victims are in northern Myanmar, the epicenter of the magnitude 7.7 quake. It was followed by a powerful 6.4 magnitude aftershock. Highways buckled, buildings crumbled, and 2 bridges have now collapsed, raising concerns about the ability of rescue workers to reach hard-hit areas.
The powerful earthquake caused a high-rise building under construction in Bangkok to collapse, killing at least 6 people. Several survivors have been pulled alive from the rubble, but more than 100 people remain missing. Bangkok was declared an emergency zone following the quake, but people are now being allowed back in their homes.
And take a look at this dash cam footage taken along a highway in Bangkok. Pay attention to the left of your screen. You can see the moment the building crashes to the ground shortly after the earthquake. There it is.
A lot of people probably thought it was their car or they felt dizzy or something, and a lot of confused people, a lot of panic, I think, especially when seeing the building coming down. People got out of their cars immediately on the expressway. It just came to a standstill. There was a lot of fear, a lot of panic because people don't know what's going to happen next. Are any other buildings going to come down? Are there any flow-on effects on an expressway even, which is elevated? Is that...
The United Nations allocated $5 million just to start relief efforts for earthquake survivors.
It is now 5:54, 2 degrees. You're watching Live at 5.
It's the last weekend of March and is going to feel a lot like winter. We have more on a potential ice storm heading our way. Stay with us. A special weather statement is in effect for much of Ontario as freezing rain is on the way.
For more on what kind of weekend Toronto residents are in store for, let's go live to CP24's Lindsay Biscaya. This storm, just like so many others, all about location, right, Lindsay?
Yeah, exactly. And really, the rain has actually started, Lena and Melissa, here in the GTA. It's rain. It's not ice at this point. You might be able to see it behind me. And that's because of the temperatures here in Toronto. So we know Environment Canada has been saying that Toronto is really not going to get the worst of this storm. And I can just, from my own observations from different, the Weather Network and other stations, it really doesn't look like the temperature here in Toronto and the GTA is going to drop below zero. So that means we won't be seeing much ice. Again, more rain for us. But yeah, I mean, areas north of the city and northeast of the city are going to be seeing ice, possibly even snow. A lot of accumulation of precipitation over the next couple of days. 1 to 3 millimeters is what we could see in Toronto. So it's starting tonight. As I mentioned, it already has started. It's actually two separate systems that are moving through. So we'll see some rain or freezing rain tonight, overnight into Saturday. Looks like it'll kind of slow down for a bit throughout Saturday, and then the heavier rain or heavier ice storm is going to come in Saturday night into Sunday. So for those who are driving, you're being advised to use caution on the roads, especially if you've already taken your snow tires off. I know some people have done that because we got a little taste of spring a couple of weeks ago. So definitely watch on the roads for any kind of hazardous driving, lack of visibility or ice on the roads. And also, widespread power outages are something that we're going to be watching for too over the weekend, especially in southern Ontario. There is a very likely possibility that we'll see widespread power outages. So again, Melissa and Lena, really a lot to watch out for, but we'll be watching here again. It's just rain at this point, could possibly turn to ice later today. Back to you.
Okay. A real evolving kind of situation we could be seeing there. Thanks so much for that, Lindsay.
Yeah.
It is 5:59 and 2 degrees. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
And as Lindsay was just talking about, the GTA is preparing for a potential ice storm. The rain has already started falling in the GTA, as you can see from our live shot. Thanks so much for watching. CTV News at 6 is coming up next.